Hi, I'm Tony Northrup and welcome to my Adobe Lightroom video training series. Now I'll go over the basics of using the library module in Lightroom. The first thing I want to show you is a pretty important trick for just avoiding frustration, and that's changing view modes using a keyboard shortcut. I'll try to give you little tips about the most helpful keyboard shortcuts as I go, because using the keyboard, you can really save a lot of time. And that's always our goal, right? Because we don't love editing images. It's fun, but we want to get it back out there and take pictures. So you want to get through this as fast as possible. And the way you do that is by using keyboard shortcuts. So Shift F changes your view mode. I hit it once and it hid the title bar up at the top there. If I hit Shift F again, it'll hide the menu bar completely. Now, the reason I think this is the very first thing I need to tell you is that I can't tell you how many people call me and they're like, where do my menus go? What the heck do I do now? I can't get to my menus. I can't do anything. That's because they've hidden it accidentally and they're just completely lost. So remember, Shift F. I don't know why they chose F, but that controls your view. So I have the menus displayed again. In fact, you know what? I'm going to hide that title bar, but still show the menus just to conserve real estate a little bit so that we can see a little bit more. Now that you know how to save yourself if you hide your menus, let's talk about opening a catalog. Now, first time you run Lightroom, it makes this catalog, and the catalog stores all the changes to your pictures and all your keywords for your pictures, and we're going to cover that in more detail. For now, though, I'm going to show you how to open up a sample catalog because I want you to work with my catalog. That way, you don't screw up any of your pictures. So from the File menu here, I'm just going to select Open Catalog and then browse to the Sample Pictures catalog, wherever it is on your disk, and then click Open. If you don't have it yet, you can download the Sample Pictures catalog from sdp.io/LRDL. Now Adobe is going to prompt you to relaunch with this catalog. So I'll just click Relaunch. It's going to close the Lightroom and then reopen it. If you get prompted to back up your catalog, well, that's a good idea to do it once in a while. Now, it's only backing it up to somewhere else on your disk. So you want to actually choose an external disk to back it up to. So I'm going to skip it because I have a backup of this computer already. Now Lightroom pops up with our sample photos and we can see the whole grid work here and all of our pictures. And this might look a little different than yours because I have pictures rated and flagged and stuff, but we'll learn how to do all of that later. The first thing you probably want to know is just how to view your pictures bigger, right? And the easiest thing to do is just to double click them. So here's a nice picture of a sunset. When I double click it, it's going to put it into Loupe view. That's L-O-U-P-E. That just allows you to see it bigger. If I click it again, you can see it zooms in to view it one-to-one, so you can see each individual pixel. And this is a great way to check the sharpness of your picture, to check the focus of it. I like to zoom in one-to-one on the person's eye when I take a portrait so that I can make sure that I got that near eye nice and sharp. So as you can see here, that looks good. Holy Elsie there, looks pretty good. Anytime you want to jump back to the grid view, whether you're in the develop mode or some other mode, just hit the G key. I use the G key all the time. It always takes you right back to the grid. That's the most useful keyboard shortcut you're going to find in Lightroom. The Lightroom screen is very customizable, and at the edges of the screen, you'll see these little arrows. Now, if you just hover your cursor over the arrow, the panel will pop out from the side or the top or the bottom, and that will give you access to the catalog and folders and collections. If you click it, it'll pop out and stay there. If you're accessing it all the time, by all means, just leave it out there. But if you're not accessing it, you probably want to save your screen real estate by just hiding it away. So I can just click that and hide it away. Now this film strip at the bottom, I think that's pretty useless in grid mode. It's more useful in like the develop module, which we'll get to later, but I'll hide that away for now. This panel over on the right is great for keywording and editing, but it can be hidden away when you're not using it. You can also hide away the menus up at the top here, allowing you to just fill the screen with your thumbnails if that's what you want. Another really useful item that you might want to view or hide is the toolbar. Now from the view menu here, you can select show toolbar. That's that very first item. Keyboard shortcut is T if you ever lose it. And this pops up a little toolbar that helps you change modes. Now this first option here is for grid view. One thing that's useful in Windows or on Mac OS is if you hover your cursor over an item, it will give you a little what they call a tooltip about it. So as I hover my cursor over the grid here, you can see it says grid view and it gives me the keyboard shortcut in parentheses G. This is loop mode, which is the same as double clicking it, E. Compare mode here, and then this next one is the survey view. So something I find really useful is over on the right side of the toolbar, and that's the thumbnail slider. So you can just make your thumbnails bigger by just dragging this to the right. So why do you want to do this? Well, I like to see my thumbnails nice and big usually, because this more easily allows me to determine which pictures in a set are the sharpest. Because sometimes just with a thumbnail, you can tell a particular picture is out of focus and then you can just delete it. And that's such a big part of a photographer's workflow. But on the other hand, you might want to use small thumbnails. If you haven't organized your photos well and you have like 10,000 photos that you need to filter through, you can use small thumbnails and then quickly scroll through until you recognize a thumbnail and then jump to it. So I find myself regularly increasing and decreasing the size of the thumbnails using that toolbar button. So now I'll show you the compare view, which I think is a really useful feature that allows you to determine which pictures in a set might be the best one. And to use compare view, just select 2 pictures. I'll show you another keyboard shortcut here. If you hold down the Control key and select something, that allows you to select multiple items. So if I just simply keep clicking different items, you'll see it changes the selection and only allows me to have 1 picture selected at a time. But if I hold down the Control key, suddenly I can select 2 or 3 or more pictures. So I'll just select these 2 cardinal pictures here, and then I'll jump down and click the compare view, which I could do by hitting C as well. Hide this panel so we can just fill the screen. And what this is doing is it's showing 2 pictures that I selected side by side. For wildlife photography, I can't tell you how useful this is because I can now click to zoom in here and it's automatically gonna zoom both the pictures in. And now that I'm seeing these pictures side by side, I can look closely and see just which of these ended up a little bit sharper. Because if you follow the advice in chapter 1 of Stunning Digital Photography, you're going to be taking a lot of pictures and deleting most of them. And as I can see, looking at these 2 pictures, looking at the eye, this one is a little less sharp and this one is a little more sharp. So you know what I'll do is I will flag this one as a pick. There's a little flag there in the lower left corner, and I'll flag this one as rejected. We'll go over the overall workflow as well as culling your pictures later on. I just wanted to show you the basics of using compare. You can also select more pictures at the same time and view them in survey mode. So here I'll pick all these pictures of this bird. What I did was I clicked to select the first picture and then I shift clicked on the last picture. And when you shift click, you select all the pictures in a range between the first one that you selected and the last one. So now that I have these 6 pictures selected, I'll click this button here to jump into survey mode. You can use the N shortcut key. And you can see it fills the screen with thumbnails of the pictures. You could pick 10 pictures or 50 pictures. It will scale the thumbnails appropriately, showing you all of them just as big as it possibly can. Now that you have your pictures in survey mode, you can once again click the little pick or reject flags down here. Or if you just want to eliminate it from the selection, maybe you're going through and just finding the very best of pictures, you can click this little X's just to take it out of the survey. So as you can see, Lightroom automatically rescales them so they're just as big as they can be in the survey. And this is a great way just to narrow it down to 1 picture because, you know, as a photographer, this is one of the most important things you do is just culling your pictures, just getting rid of all the bad pictures and narrowing it down to just your best few. So this is literally that process. And you know, of these, I think this is the very best picture. I hit G to quickly jump back into the grid view. Now we're ready to move on to just really basic photo editing stuff. This is the good stuff. You can do a lot of adjustments without leaving the library module in Lightroom, and it's something I do all the time. I can't tell you how much you can get done. So we'll jump back into Lightroom, and I'm going to pull out this right panel here so that I can see it. So let's do some edits on this Blue Jay picture here. Within the library module, I can use the Quick Develop panel here to make minor edits. Now you can see there's this little triangle thing here, and as I click it, it opens up or hides it. So you can do that if you just find you're not using the keywording panel and you just want to hide it, you can just hide these things. Lightroom is all about allowing you to use your screen real estate as efficiently as possible, and you should take advantage of it. Now, Quick Develop provides some real basic things. The auto-tone picture here will often automatically fix issues like contrast, and you can also select a different white balance. So if you find that your picture is a little bit orange or a little bit green, you might be able to fix it right here from the white balance drop list. So we'll just say that it was a cloudy day. And you can see that made it a little bit greener. My white balance originally was okay, but I'll set that back to as shot. But you can experiment with the different white balances just to get the best color that you can from your picture without ever leaving the library module. I love it. Now, you can also adjust the exposure here. You'll see 4 little buttons. If you hover over them, Lightroom tells you what they do. The left button here decreases the exposure by a full stop. That's like using exposure compensation on your camera when you're taking the picture, except it all happens in post. Pretty brilliant, right? So if you accidentally overexpose a picture, you might be able to completely repair it just by clicking that button. Really helps if you're shooting RAW. You can still make changes if you're shooting with a JPEG, but if you shoot RAW, it does work better. So check out chapters 1 and 4 of Stunning Digital Photography for more information about that. The button all the way on the right increases it by a full stop. Now, of course, it can't work miracles. It can only edit whatever it can find in your picture file, but you can often really improve your pictures just by using those buttons. These move it up by a full stop. The smaller buttons in the middle here increase or decrease the exposure by 1/3 of a stop. So just use that to fine tune the brightness of your picture and get it basically where you want it. You can do more complex changes in the develop module later. Right below here, we have clarity and vibrance. And clarity kind of picks up on the edges of a subject and will really just kind of make a picture pop. So this is something you can adjust to taste, whether you increase it or decrease it. If you decrease it a lot, it'll appear a little more washed out. And if you increase it, your picture is going to look a little more intense. So we can see, if I jump back down, I'll just click reset all, and we can see the before and after here. So you can see what clarity did. It went from being kind of washed out to being seriously pretty contrasty. Now, I know I told you earlier the most important keyboard shortcut was that Shift F, and that's pretty important. The next most important one, Control Z. That's undo. If you screw something up, go to Control Z and you can undo whatever you did. No change in Lightroom is ever permanent. So I hit Control Z twice and I undid it twice. If you want to redo something, if you want to undo your undo, hit Control Shift Z and that will redo whatever you just did. So Control Z and Control Shift Z, those work in almost any app. If you're using a Mac, it's going to be the Command key instead of the Control key generally. So one last set of buttons down here is Vibrance. And Vibrance is a bit like Saturation, except it's a little bit better. In my opinion, it's just a little bit more useful than Saturation. So you can see as I keep going right here, those greens in the background are getting brighter, the bird itself is getting bluer and bluer, and until it's just ridiculous. That's too far, Tony. Back it up. Okay, I'll hit reset all. Now we go back to our original picture, which by comparison ends up looking a little washed out. There's some really useful information up here at the top in the histogram. And oh, I love my histograms. These are so useful because they tell you how bright or dark your picture is. So as I look at this histogram, I can see that there's a bunch of empty space here in the right third. And I really like to see the histogram using some of that space. So that tells me that my picture's a little bit underexposed. So just based on that, I might want to increase the exposure a bit. Now, something that I need to look out for are the highlights. I want to make sure nothing is up against the right side of that histogram because that part would be overexposed. Getting a little into photographic techniques here, but it is really important to know how to use a histogram. So check out chapter 4 of Stunning Digital Photography for detailed information about how to use it. Below the histogram, you'll see some more useful information, metadata from the picture. So you can see that this particular picture was taken at ISO 400, 500 millimeters, f/5.6, and 1/60th of a second. It just tells you your camera settings, but how nice that you have it right there as you're flipping through your pictures. It's just such a great learning tool. Now let's talk about copying and pasting. This is a great way to speed up your workflow, and it's a little bit different than it is in every other app. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some serious changes to this picture. Oh, I hate that exposure, but I will bump the clarity up a bunch and I'll bump up the vibrance some. So now we have a little bit more of an interesting picture. Now what I can do is I can copy these settings and paste it onto another picture. And the way you do that, at least using the keyboard, I find it the most convenient, is to do Control-Shift-C. And now it pops up the Copy Settings dialog box. And there's a whole bunch of things that you can decide to copy and paste. Everything from white balance to the tone. For now, I'm just going to select Check All. As we progress further through the lessons, you'll get a better sense for what all these different things mean. But for now, I'll just copy and paste everything. So I click check all, and now I'll click copy. And now all the settings that I've changed here are in the computer's clipboard, and I'll hit G to jump back to the grid mode and apply that to a different picture. Let's open up this fellow cardinal here, and now I'll hit Control-Shift-V. V as in Victor. And look at that, it just pops. It took all those settings and applied it to the next picture. So when would you want to use that? Because it seems like every picture is kind of an individual thing, right? Well, it's not always. If you take 20 pictures of your kids in a row in kind of the same light, you might find that all of them were a little bit underexposed, or they all need a different white balance. So what you can do is just apply those settings to one picture and then select them all by clicking and then shift clicking the last picture in the series, and then Control-Shift-V to paste those settings. And then bam, all your pictures instantly will have those same settings, and you won't have to go through and tweak each one. What a time saver, right? So remember, Control-Shift-C to copy your settings, and then Control-Shift-V as in Victor to paste your settings to other pictures. And you never have to worry about screwing it up, because you can always undo it with Control-Z, or you click the Reset All button on the Quick Develop panel to undo the settings for one particular picture. So now let's talk about painting. I'll jump back into Lightroom down here, and you'll see in the lower left corner, if you have the toolbar open, you can hit T to open it if you don't have it, there's a little paintbrush. And if you click that, you can choose to paint some attribute across multiple different pictures. And this list here lets you choose what's going to be painted. Keywords, labels, flags, we'll get to that stuff in a little bit. But for now, we're talking about settings. So I'll select settings. Now you can select the settings that you want to paint. Autotone is probably the most useful, but once you get into presets, you can use this to paint a particular preset across a lot of different pictures. We'll cover presets later too. Don't worry, there's a lot that we're talking about that we haven't gotten to yet, but we will get to it all. So for now, we've used the autotone. I'm just going to use that, and now I can just paint pictures with autotone. And look, whenever I'm holding my mouse button down, but whenever I move it over a picture, it just automatically paints it. I don't know why you'd want to use painting instead of just copying and pasting. It's two different ways to get the job done. Now let's talk about making virtual copies, which is one of the most useful features in Lightroom. With virtual copies, you can copy a picture, but you're not physically copying it, which means it's not really taking up any extra disk space. Sometimes I'll make 10 virtual copies of a picture, and then I will go through and apply different settings to each of them. So I might make one black and white, and I might oversaturate one. And then after I do all these settings, I can flip through them and decide which one I really like the best. So if you want to just experiment with the picture or experiment with multiple different types of settings for a single photo, virtual copies are just perfect for you. So I'll jump back into the grid view of Lightroom, and you know what? Let's select this pretty female cardinal here. I am going to right click this and then click Create Virtual Copy. Now I have two copies of the same picture, but remember, there's only one copy of it on my disk, because Lightroom just remembers all the settings that you've made on a particular picture, and then it applies it as you browse it. This just saves you disk space. So there's one physical copy, two virtual copies, but it's tremendously useful. So now that I have that one selected, let's say I want one to be super bright and a bunch of clarity, and then I want this other one to be super dark. You can do that with virtual copies, and that example is kind of silly, but once you get in deep into the develop module, you're going to find making virtual copies extremely valuable. Now let's cover sorting your picture in the Lightroom grid. If you have the toolbar open, press T to show or hide the toolbar. You can change the sort order, and by default, it's by capture time. That means that it looks at the time stored in your picture's metadata. So the capture time is whatever your time your camera thinks it is when you took the picture. And if you took the time to set the clock on your camera, then it's going to be the correct time. If you never set the time on your camera, who knows, it might say 1990 January 1st or something. But generally, as long as you set the time, the capture time is going to be the time that your picture was taken. And I think that's usually the most useful way to sort it. But there are other options, and they can help you find your pictures when you need to. You can sort it by the time when the picture was added to the library, when you imported it, basically. You can select edit time to show the pictures that were most recently edited. That's pretty useful. Maybe you just edited a picture yesterday and you're trying to find it again. Just sort it by edit time. It'll pop right up to the top. You can also sort it by edit count. And this will show you which picture has the most heavy edits, at least in Lightroom. So if I scroll up here, you can see the picture I did the most edits to was this Blue Jay picture. And then going down, well, what you see are a lot of really heavily processed pictures in my library. So there are a few different sorting options here. Once we get deeper into organizing our pictures, it'll be really useful to be able to sort them by the rating, or whether you select them as a pick, or whether you've chosen a label. Sometimes it's useful to even sort them by the name or the file extension. Now let's talk about organizing your photos in the library module. First, I want to talk about using catalogs. Now, when we started all this, we opened up the sample catalog, and that was something different than the default catalog that Lightroom creates for you. Catalogs store all the changes to a set of photos, but a catalog does not store the photos themselves. The catalog might also have previews for your photos in it, so catalogs can actually grow to be pretty big in size. Now, as I mentioned, catalogs store all your changes, and that means that they're super important, right? Because you might have edits to thousands of your pictures, and if you were to lose that catalog file, you'd lose all your edits. You wouldn't lose your pictures, you'd still have your original pictures, but you would go back to the original unedited pictures. And I know if you put a lot of time into Lightroom, that could be a big loss. So catalog files are something you need to understand and something you want to plan for backup. So let's jump into Lightroom and go over some basic library or catalog management. The first time you run Lightroom, it will create a catalog for you automatically. And I'll go in and open that now. From the File menu, I'm selecting Open Catalog. By default, Lightroom stores your catalog in the Pictures folder here. So I selected Pictures, and then I'll dig into Lightroom. And you can see this is the default catalog. It's under the Pictures Lightroom folder. I'll select Lightroom 5 catalog here, and then click Open. And because I'm opening a different catalog, Lightroom's going to need to relaunch. So I'll click Relaunch, and it closes it and reopens it for me. Now you can see because I opened a different catalog, it has completely different pictures in it. Again, the pictures aren't stored in the catalog themselves. The catalog just is a table of contents to your pictures. It remembers where your pictures are and any changes that you've made to it. I'm going to open up File Explorer and look into what exactly composes a catalog a little bit. Now, if you're a Mac person, you can do this with Finder. Now I've selected Pictures, and then of course My Pictures, and then here in the Lightroom folder, we can see all the different files that make up the catalog. This file here, the Lightroom 5 catalog, has a .lrcat extension, which depending on how you have Explorer configured, you might not be able to see the file extension itself. You'll also see a couple of different subfolders. Backups, pretty obvious based on the name. When Lightroom asks you if you want to back up your catalog, it stores a backup copy here. And because it's saved on the same disk, this isn't protecting you from a fire or somebody stealing your computer. No, it doesn't really protect you against those scenarios. You have to have an external backup for that. But it does protect you in case your Lightroom catalog gets corrupted. And believe it or not, that can happen. It can happen because your drive gets jarred, or your computer has a memory corruption error, or just bad luck. So those backups are really important. They can also be pretty big though. You can see it's stored like a dozen different backups here. And if I check the total size of them, well, it's 192 megabytes on this PC. But on my desktop computer upstairs, it's several gigabytes. So all those backups can take up just a whole lot of space. But nonetheless, like I said, it's important. You might not need to keep as many backups as that. You'll see two other folders here, Lightroom 5 Previews and Lightroom 5 Smart Previews. These folders are just where Lightroom keeps the data that it uses to show you your pictures quickly, and you never need to touch them or worry about them. I just wanted to show you that the LRCat file and all these subfolders, all that together makes up your catalog. Now, if you lose the previews, if you delete the backups, that's okay. All those subfolders can go away. All you really need is that LRCat file, because Lightroom can regenerate the previews for you. So don't sweat it if some of that gets deleted. If you want to make a new catalog, go to the File menu and then select New Catalog. Now for me, I like to keep all my pictures in one catalog, and then within that catalog, I organize my pictures with collections and labels and tags and keywords and stuff we'll go over in just a little bit. Some people, however, like to make separate catalogs. If you're a professional, you might make a separate catalog for each different client that you're working with, just to make sure that no two clients' pictures ever get confused. So once you go to File and select New Catalog, you can just name your catalog. So we'll call this client 2 and then click save. And now it's asking me again to back up because I skipped it last time, but I'll click skip again. And because I created a new catalog, it needs to close and then reopen. But now it reopens with a new catalog, and of course there are no pictures in it. I would now have to import some pictures, and that's something we'll cover in a little bit too. If you regularly switch between catalogs, you can go to the file menu and then select open recent, and this will show you catalogs that you've recently had opened. So I'm just going to switch back so that I can show you how to optimize your Lightroom catalog. This is something that can improve performance. Now, later versions of Lightroom are a little bit better about this, but the older versions have to be optimized pretty regularly. From the file menu here, just select optimize catalog. And like I said, it's not something you generally have to do, but if you feel like Lightroom is lagging, this can help. But honestly, Lightroom is pretty much always a little bit slow. So don't think that this is going to fix everything. And if it is slow, you just kind of have to expect it, right? That didn't take long at all, and my catalog is now optimized. If you do work with multiple catalogs, there's one other thing I'd like to mention. You can always open a separate catalog, and that keeps your pictures entirely separate. But maybe you want to combine two catalogs or copy and paste settings from one catalog to another. You can do that by importing a catalog. On the File menu, you'll see the Import from Another Catalog menu item here. This just allows you to browse to a different catalog and select it. Now, I don't actually want to do this, but if I were to do this, it would just pull in all the pictures from that catalog into my current catalog, just consolidating multiple catalogs. So if you've been working with different catalogs and you decided that's a pain and you don't want to do that anymore, just pick one catalog and import everything in, and then you can delete your old catalogs. You're just fine. One of the best ways to find your pictures is by using filters. So let's jump into Lightroom and check out how filters work. Up at the top here, we have the library filter bar. If you don't see that, you can go to the View menu and select Show Filter Bar here. It's the second one down. You can also bring it up with the backslash button on your keyboard. With the library filter toolbar selected, you can see that I can filter by 3 different traits: text, attribute, and metadata. So the first thing I'll do is use text. Text is a really useful way to search for pictures either by file name or by some keyword that you've happened to tag it with. So I bet I have some pictures in here tagged with Chelsea. All right, not all of these are Chelsea. Some of these are birds. But look, there's a picture of Chelsea. So it worked. You can see I sometimes tag pictures with the wrong keyword. But that's a quick way to search either by keywords, tags, or file name. The attribute filter is really useful once you get into rating your pictures and flagging them as pics. So let's see if I've flagged any of these pictures as a pic. There you go. You can see that some subset of the pictures has been flagged. So by selecting this, I see just the pictures in my library that have been flagged. Now, if I wanted to clear that, I would just pick it again. And now it's going to show me all of my pictures once again. You can also filter pictures by ratings, which is what I do more than anything. Notice that by default, this shows the greater than or equal sign here. And so now it's showing me all pictures rated 5 stars or greater. Can't really do that. If you want to show just 4-star pictures and better, you can do that. You can click this and switch it though. So if you just want to find all your pictures that are rated under 4 stars, then that option is available to you. You can also click that and select is equal to just see pictures that are rated 3 stars or 4 stars or something else. But greater than or equal to is what I use most of the time. Over on the kind here, you can choose to view just your photos, just virtual copies, or you can choose to view just videos. So you can see that allowed me to quickly find just the videos that I had imported into my catalog. That's a feature of Lightroom 5. So if you have an earlier version, you don't have the same video capabilities. In the middle here, we can filter out just the pictures that have a particular color label. So I'll turn that off and just view all of my pictures again. And let's say I want to apply a label to those 3 pictures. For those, I will set the color label to red. Now that I have some pictures with a red label, I can see just those pictures by selecting red from the attribute filter menu here. We'll go into more detail about using labels a little bit later. Now let's check out the metadata filtering. Oh, I love metadata filtering because so often I'm looking for a picture and I can remember, oh, I was using the 5D Mark III and the 70-200 lens that day. And what I can do is I can go right into the metadata here, pick my camera, 5D Mark III, and pick the lens. There we go, 70 to 200. And there are all the pictures that I've taken with that particular combination. So if you're like me and you're thinking about the particular gear that you were using, that's a quick way to find those pictures. If you're also wondering, oh, I wonder how this particular lens compares to that other lens, it's a quick way to narrow your pictures down by a particular camera or lens. It's also a great way if you think about the dates. If you happen to remember, oh, where's that picture? I remember I took it in June. Well, you can go over here to the dates panel, go back to 2013, and now I can select just the pictures that I took in June. So you can see I must have been really into spiders. I guess I was doing some macro photography in June. So these are all the pictures that I took in June. And of course you can narrow it down further if I'd want to see just the pictures I took with the Mark III or with a particular lens. Now, another trick you need to know here is that you can change what these are. So if I click this list, I can choose what I filter it by. So sometimes I'm looking for just night pictures. And what I'll do is I'll go to the shutter speed. Let me reset the date here, change it back to all dates. So now that this says shutter speed, I can scroll down here and just pick really long exposures. So I'll click 145 seconds here, and sure enough, that's a night picture. Now I'll hold down the control key so I can select multiple items and control click all these different times. Now I can see all the pictures that I've taken that were 30 seconds or longer. So these are all my long exposures. Learning to use filters is one of the best things you can do in Lightroom because it allows you to quickly find your pictures. And using Lightroom filters, you can filter by just about anything. Now you can see that I've been using 4 different traits here, but you can do more or less than that. If you hover it over it, there's this little list over here and it allows you to add a particular column. So for example, look at all the different things you can filter by. You can use a specific aperture or a specific ISO speed. If you have location metadata in there, you can sort it out by just the location, copyright status, the aspect ratio, all these different things that you might find useful to you. So for example, I could select aperture here and then see just the pictures that I took at f4. If you're sick of that column and you only need the 4 columns, just click remove that column and it goes away. No problem at all. When you're ready to get rid of all your filters, you can either just click it to hide it or click none up here. If you find yourself using the same filter more than once, you might want to save it as a preset so that you can quickly pull it up again without having to browse through the different dates and camera settings. Over on the right here, if you click that list, you can go down and choose Save Current Settings as a new preset. So right now, I have the night photography pictures taken the long exposures. I'll save this preset name as long exposures and then click Create. Now I'll turn the filter off and I can quickly recall it by just clicking this list and then selecting long exposures. And it immediately restored my filters exactly as I had specified, allowing me to quickly find my pictures again. What a great feature. Now you'll notice if you change sources that all your filters go away. So here's a collection that I made. We'll cover collections in a little bit. I selected it and then all my filters went away. What a pain, right? I'd have to go through and select all those things again. Well, I'll go back to all photographs and pull my filter back up, long exposures, and then I will lock this. And if you're locked, then your filters won't go away when you change to a different source, such as a collection or a catalog. So I'll go ahead and go down here to this just Smart Collection. And you can see the filters did not go away. Even if there's no pictures that match it, they'll stay up there and stay present. So I actually find locking the filters to be really useful, and I usually leave it locked. Now let's talk about working with folders within Lightroom. Now, Lightroom is kind of this virtual thing. It stores all your picture previews and all your settings and catalogs, but you might be used to working with folders within Windows or within Mac OS, and you can indeed directly access your folders from within Lightroom, but you kind of want to stop moving your pictures around within folders. So let's see how that works. Switching back to Lightroom here, I will expand the folders panel here, and we can see all the different disks that your computer might have in it. And as I scroll down, we'll just see the folders that have pictures stored within them. On the right here, it shows you how many pictures are stored in any given folder. So I'll expand this pictures here and we can see a couple of different folders. So if I want to just browse this one folder, I can do that right from the folders menu. And if I want to manage my files, I should also do that within the folders. So what I'll do is I'll move this folder here into the pictures. And Lightroom is prompting me that I'm moving folders on the disk and that it's actually making changes to the file system, because Lightroom doesn't usually make changes to the file system. It just kind of stores virtual changes to everything. So your original pictures are preserved. But if you start doing file management with the folders panel, it will move your folders. So it's asking me, and I'll just click move. So now you can see I did everything correctly. I moved a folder from within the folders panel in Lightroom. Therefore, Lightroom knows where the pictures are. But let's say I got ambitious and I did this in Explorer. By the way, you can open up Explorer at any point for a particular folder by right-clicking it and then clicking Show in Explorer. So here's that exact picture in Explorer. And you know what? I'm just going to move it somewhere else because I'm just a rebel. I'm just a crazy guy. And I don't care if Lightroom doesn't want me to move things around. Whoa, so what if you just went rogue and you did this? Look, I'm moving it to a different folder. Okay, now I'll go back into Lightroom and, look, there's a little question mark there. And look at these things. That means that it's working from a smart preview. That's because it can't find the picture. So if I want to go in and edit it or something, well, it happens to have a smart preview so it can show me something, but it can't access the original file, which means I couldn't get all the detail out of it. I couldn't make good edits to it. If you move a folder or a file outside of Lightroom, you just need to tell Lightroom where the pictures are again. And if you move an entire folder with multiple pictures, you just need to tell it where one picture is, and it'll figure everything else out automatically, generally. So I have one of these pictures found in the catalog. I'll right-click that, and then I'll click Show in Explorer. Normally, this will show you the original file itself in Explorer, but Lightroom doesn't know where it is. So this forces Lightroom to look for the picture and realize it's not there, and then it prompts me. It says, well, I can't find the file. What did you do with it, stupid? So I can just click Locate, and now I know I just moved it up one folder, and I know it's in this folder. And so now I will just select that file. Oh boy, which one is it? There it is, and I'll select it. And you can see what happened here. The folder that's missing now shows 0 pictures, but this folder, back in its original place, once again has 15 pictures in it. So Lightroom was able to find all the other pictures that were in the same folder, and everything is happy once again. But do try to avoid using Explorer or Finder in macOS to manage your pictures. Try to do all your picture management right within Lightroom. You can also tell Lightroom where missing folders are right from the folders panel. I always think about pictures first, but if you think about the folders, just go into the folders panel here, and then you can right-click the missing folder and click Find Missing Folder. Now, you're just going to tell Lightroom where you moved that file to, and while you're at it, you should just apologize for not using it correctly. You can see I picked another folder that it already has in the catalog, so it's just asking me to merge it, but I'll click Merge. So now that missing folder is completely gone, and the Lightroom catalog is once again in sync. Now let's talk about renaming pictures. Now, within Lightroom, you're not really worried about the file names of things because you have so many other ways to organize your pictures. You have your metadata and your keywords and all your ratings and the date that the picture was taken and the camera. So it's not like working with Explorer or Finder where you are constantly worried about what the files are named. You could pretty much just forget about the file names and never think about it. But if you're one of these people who's still kind of doing things the old-fashioned way and you want to worry about naming files, it's really easy to do within Lightroom. I find the easiest way to rename files is to hit the F2 keyboard shortcut. That brings up the rename dialog. You also have the option of pulling up the library menu and then clicking Rename Photo. Once you do this, Lightroom asks you what technique you want to do to rename your photos. It seems kind of silly, right? Because you just want to rename the photo, but you can have it automatically rename them according to the date or the existing file name plus some kind of sequence. So by default, it says file naming file name. And so if I just select this, it's going to rename it based on the existing file name. So it won't really be any different. If you actually want to type something, you probably want to pick custom name here. So I'll just call this baby. And then click OK. Now this can get a little more complex. That was one picture, but if you select multiple pictures, I'll hit F2 again. Now you can see that it will automatically number the pictures for me. So I'm using the same technique. Original file number here will extract the number that your camera labeled it. Sometimes it's like DSC0245, and it will take that number and keep it, which might be meaningful to you, but probably isn't. So for me, I generally just pick custom name X of Y. And you know what? In case I had other baby pictures, I'll start this sequence at 50. So when I click OK here, you can see that it's renamed all the pictures. I'm just going to pull this up because down here on this bar, it will show me what the pictures are individually named. So you can see that first picture is now called baby 50 of 15. It's a weird little numbering bug, I think. 52 of 15, 53 of 15. So that's a quick way to rename your files. Again, you want to do this file management stuff in Lightroom and not in Explorer or Finder. Now let's talk about keywording. Keywording is one of the most useful ways to organize your files. Keywords can be anything that's meaningful to you. So if you take pictures of your daughter and her name happens to be Madeline, you might add the keyword Madeline. You might also have multiple keywords for a single file. So if you went to Harkness State Park and you took pictures of Madeline at sunset, you could add the keywords Madeline, Harkness, sunset. You might also add portrait, summer, anything else that's going to help you find that picture later. You can then search for those keywords in Lightroom. Another thing, if you ever happen to do stock photography, your stock photography website will usually extract those keywords and apply it for you so your customers can actually search by those same keywords. So let's jump into Lightroom and I'll show you how to set keywords. Over on the right panel, we have the keywording panel, and this will show you all, I have multiple pictures selected, so it's showing me all the keywords that are available for all those pictures. I'll just select this one here, and you know what, I will assign some new keywords, baby and nest. And I'm just typing it and separating each keyword with a comma. If you want to use a keyword with multiple words in it, just don't put a comma, just put a space in there. So we might say portrait session. And then hit enter. And now this one picture has those keywords. If I wanted to quickly search for it, I could pull up the text filter here and search for portrait. And there's my picture because that keyword matched it perfectly. So let's clear that filter and do some more keywording. I find it really useful to select a group of pictures and then type keywords that are relevant to that entire group. This really just makes things go much faster. So I'll clear these existing keywords and just type baby. Now, some of these pictures have something in common. These pictures all have a black background. So I'll also type black background. These pictures are all taken on fur. So I'll type a comma and type fur. These two pictures have a hat. So down here in the click to add keywords, I'll type hat. Now you can see that Lightroom is pretty smart about this. It's paying attention to the keywords that you put in and prompting you to add some suggested keywords. So you can see I used the keyword nest earlier and it's suggesting it here. I'll select these three pictures. I'm clicking the first one, holding the shift key, and then shift clicking the last one. And now I can click nest and it just added it for me. That just saves me having to go to the keyboard and type. A quick little time saver there. If you find yourself using keywords all the time and you're frequently working with the same set of keywords, you can save yourself some typing by creating a keyword set. So let's jump into Lightroom and see how that's done. Keyword set is located right here in the keywording panel. So I'll click this and then click Save Current Settings as a new preset. This is going to just create a new preset for me. So I'll make a set for portraits. And now that I've made this keyword set, I can begin to add keywords to it. So I have it selected. I'll go down and then click Edit Set. And Lightroom prompts me to enter in a set of keywords that I'll be able to easily select later. So what kind of keywords might you put in for portraits? Man, woman, baby, nest, white background, black background, professional, family, boudoir. And now I'll click Change. And you can see that these are now quickly available to me here. This baby's a man, so I'll select man and baby are here. This is on a black background, well that came up automatically. This is on a white background, so I'll select that and then click white background. So those keyword sets allow you to very quickly recall a set of keywords and apply it using your mouse instead of your keyboard. Now let's talk about using keyword lists. Keyword lists help you keep organized with your keywords because, as you can imagine, there's the opportunity for human error here. You might type babies one time and then baby the next. And then you wouldn't be able to have your pictures grouped together very well. So I like to use the keyword list. It's located right under the keywording panel here. And this basically shows you every keyword that you've used in the current catalog. That way you can just quickly go through and select the exact same keyword. It's helpful for making sure that you type things correctly, but it's also helpful for finding and organizing your pictures. So you can see I frequently use the bird keyword here. If I click this arrow, it will show me all the bird pictures. If I click this checkbox here, it will apply it there. That's a much more accurate way to keyword your photos than simply typing it, because you eliminate the possibility that you can make a typo. And that one little typo can make it impossible to find your pictures later. So whenever possible, avoid typing things. Now let's quickly just, oh, that's not a bird. I'll deselect that. But if I click this arrow here, bam, quickly shows me all the files with that exact keyword. One of the problems with keywords is that you might not always be consistent. Anytime there's a human in the equation, inconsistency tends to creep in. So for example, you might say baby one time and baby's the next, or newborn one time and baby the next. And then when you went to search for it, not everything would show up. You can use Lightroom's keyword list to be much more consistent about it. So let's get into Lightroom. Below the keywording pane is the keyword list pane. And this is a compilation of every keyword that I've ever used and how many times I've used it. Now I can easily select one of these and then either add the keyword to the selected photo by clicking on the left over here, or I can click this arrow on the right to quickly see all pictures associated with that keyword. I don't really want my picture associated with squirrel, so I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. But you can see how you can quickly browse through your entire keyword list to make sure that you're consistent every time. You can also search this to filter your keywords down and make sure that you use the same term each and every time. So now let's get into using metadata to organize your pictures in Lightroom. Your camera automatically adds a bunch of metadata to your pictures, like the shutter speed and ISO. We kind of saw that earlier when we were filtering pictures. You can also define custom metadata, things like a title for your pictures, a caption for your pictures, as well as keywords. So let's look at how Lightroom does it. I'll just hide this keywording pane to save some space. And on the right here, we see a bunch of different types of metadata. Notice this list right here, it says default. This is the default metadata set, but I do have other metadata sets that I can choose from. I'll stick with the default for now. Now, the title here isn't something that most people will ever use. It almost seems redundant with the file name, right? But for a stock photographer like myself, when I upload pictures to a stock agency, they will look in the metadata for the title and automatically name it that. So if I type a title here, cardinal in tree, then when I upload the picture, I don't have to retype it. Anyway, it saves me a lot of time to type the titles into the metadata section. I can also use that to apply metadata to a group of different pictures. Now you'll see a lot of different metadata down here, which might or might not be useful too. So for example, if you use Lightroom here, it's just confirming that I want to apply the metadata to the selected photo. So I'll click Apply to Selected. The copyright here is useful to a lot of people. I'm just going to put my name in as the copyright holder and then set the copyright status to copyrighted. I'll click Don't Show Again because it keeps prompting me. Now, you don't have to do that. As soon as you take your picture, at least in the United States, your picture's automatically copyrighted, so it doesn't matter legally whether you have a copyright in the metadata there, but it can be useful, especially if you have pictures from multiple different photographers in your Lightroom catalogs. Down here we see important information about the pictures, including the focal length and the ISO rating, and Lightroom won't actually allow you to change that. That doesn't mean that you can't change it. You can't trust metadata in other people's pictures because you can go in and edit the metadata using the file itself, but Lightroom doesn't provide a user interface to kind of do that. I don't know why you would ever want to change it. You can also click these arrows here to show pictures taken with that same metadata. So here I just clicked it to show all pictures taken with ISO 100. Record your current location. Now let's look at some of the other metadata sets. As I click this, I'll take a look at the EXIF data. You can see that this has some overlap with the previous set of metadata. It shows me my ISO and whether the flash fired, but it also drops things like the title because that's not part of the EXIF data. The EXIF data is kind of what your camera puts in there. What if you find yourself applying the same metadata over and over again, typing the same title and the same copyright and the same caption? Well, you can make a preset that allows you to populate that really quickly. At the top of the metadata list, you'll see the preset, and it says none because I'm not using a preset now. So I'll click that and then click Edit Presets to create a new preset. Now I can select which of these groups of metadata I want to populate. It has some selected here. Basic info. Now I can type what I want the metadata to be. Now, maybe I want it to be by default 4 stars, and I don't necessarily want to define the copy name. I can clear that checkbox. Now for a caption, I'll type Tony's picture. Now you wouldn't generally set your camera info types of meta, but as we go down further, you might actually want to set your copyright info. So there I've populated some common copyright data. Now what I'll do is I'll click Done, and then Lightroom prompts me to save it. So I'll click Save As and give it a name. And then click Create. Now, for any picture that I want to apply that to, I just select it and then click the preset list and then select my custom metadata preset. And you can see here it assigned it 4 stars and set me as the copyright holder. So that's just a really quick way to apply a group of metadata to pictures. If you find yourself doing something over and over again in Lightroom, chances are good you can automate it. And that's how you do it with metadata. Now I'd like to quickly show you how you can view metadata after you export a picture. So let's get back into Lightroom, and that picture I just applied the settings to, I'm going to select it and then go to the File menu and click Export. Organizing this saves a picture as a JPEG so that I can put it on Facebook or share it with my friends. So I'm happy with the folder. It's under Pictures and then Metadata Sample here, and I'll click Export. Now I'll flip over to Explorer, go to my Pictures folder, look in the Metadata Samples folder, and let's view these as thumbnails so I can find it easy. Here it is. So notice that on the View menu, there's a Details pane and a Preview pane here. If I turn that off, I can't see the metadata, but if I have it selected, I can see it, and it all shows up in the right pane here. You can see the stars, you can see that the author is Tony Northrup and the title is Tony's picture. You can see the type of camera I used. All the metadata that I assigned to my preset is there and intact and searchable from Explorer. For example, if I switch over to details here, I can now sort it by the rating. So this type of metadata can be really useful, especially if you need to continue to work with your JPEG files after you export them. Let me show you a couple other hints for using Explorer. By default, you can see I've had it show me tags and rating and camera model, but you might not see those particular categories when you view the list of files with the details. All you have to do, and this works in other versions of Windows too, is to right-click the column heading and then select the bit of metadata that you want to see. If you don't see it on this first list, click More, and you'll get the complete list, which is long. Let's say you want to see the ISO speed. There we go. I'll select ISO speed and then click OK. So I can drag this column heading right over here and see it. Now I can sort it by ISO. That's a great way to find all my high ISO and low ISO pictures really quickly. I'm not going to go into too much detail about using metadata in Explorer because, well, you don't do too much of it. You should be using Lightroom for most of those things. But occasionally it is useful when you're looking for a particular JPEG. Now let's talk about how to rate your pictures in Lightroom. And I think this is the single most useful way to organize your photos, because I don't always want to find every picture of my daughter. I want to find the best pictures of her. You know, maybe I need to make a collage because she's graduating elementary school. Well, I have thousands of pictures of her. I want to just find the good ones. So when I capture pictures and I'm browsing through them, I'll just quickly rate them from 1 to 5 stars. And then later I can find just the 5-star pictures. It works great. Let's get in there. You can see beneath every picture here, it's showing a number of stars. I can change it just by clicking it. Now, if you're looking at the pictures and you don't see those stars, you just need to display it. You can right-click right below the picture, not the picture itself, but right below it, and then select any one of these things to show it. So, for example, if I had folder selected, I would see the folder that the picture was contained in. So now I want to see the rating and the label. I'll select rating and label. Now I can more easily access it, but you can change that at any time. What you see in the grid, it doesn't change your actual data, just what you see. And I'll cover that in more detail in the lesson that covers personalizing Lightroom. But it's kind of slow to be looking at pictures and then marking them with the mouse. I'm a keyboard guy. So what I like to do is to double click my pictures, close this filter. I'll double click my pictures and view it in loop view. And then I'll use the keyboard. So if I think this is a 4-star picture, I'll push 4 and then I'll push the right arrow key. Then I'll click 5 and the right arrow key. If that's a 3-star picture, I'll give it 3 stars. This is a 1-star, terrible, awful picture. So I'll just push 1. And as you can see, this allows me to just really quickly progress through my pictures and rate them. And then I can just go back and find all my 5-star pictures. I tend to use 5 stars to mean the pictures that I think are portfolio worthy. 4 stars means this is a very solid picture, but it's not a portfolio picture. 3 stars is a mediocre picture. It might be usable, it's okay. 2 stars is, it's a bad picture, but I can't quite bring myself to delete it. Maybe it's like a little bit blurry, but the thought of deleting it makes me cringe. There's like a hoarder in me that doesn't want to get rid of it, even though I probably should. 1 star means I should just delete this picture, but I'm not going to delete it right this second, but I will delete it in the future. Then whenever I start to run out of disk space, I go into Lightroom and I filter all my 1-star pictures and I just delete them all. That's just the way I decided to use the star ratings, but you can use it however you'd like. Now let's talk about collections. Catalogs are this physical thing that keeps your pictures separate. Collections, on the other hand, are just a logical way of organizing your photos and allowing you to quickly jump back to them. Collections work a lot like a folder, except while you can put one folder inside of another, you can only put a collection inside of a collection set. So this is our hierarchy. Collection sets contain either collections or other collection sets, and then collections contain pictures, but collections can't contain collection sets or pictures, and collection sets can't contain pictures. That I'm sure you did keep track of, but I'll make it much clearer as we go through and demonstrate this. Let's hide these folders and expand the collections. The easiest way to create a new collection is just to select a bunch of pictures and then add it to the collection. So here's a couple of pictures of a cormorant. I'll select these. Now I'll click the plus sign here and then click Create Collection. And I'll name this collection Cormorant. Now you see I have a few options here. I can put it inside a collection set, and we'll cover that in a moment. And I have the option to include the selected photos. So I've selected a couple of photos that I want in there. I'll select that. I also have the option to put the original photos in there or to make virtual copies and put the virtual copies in there. Virtual copy is just keep your changes separate from the original picture. I'm going to go ahead and put the originals in there. Finally, I have set as target collection as an option, but I'll cover that later too. So for now, I'll just click create to create that collection. And we can see Lightroom creates a collection with those 2 pictures. And I can just quickly jump to a different collection and see those pictures and jump back to my cormorants. So that works really great. So now let's add some more pictures to that collection. Here's another picture of a cormorant. I can just grab this and drag it right into the cormorant collection. And that's a pretty quick way to go about it, but if you're a keyboard person, that would be a little slow, right? And Lightroom is definitely optimized for adding things with the keyboard. So I'm going to hit Control-Z, my favorite keyboard shortcut, to undo something. And that removes it back out of the collection. You can see there's just 2 pictures in there now. I'm going to set this collection as the target collection. I'm going to right-click it and then select Set as Target Collection. You can see Lightroom shows a plus next to it to indicate that it is the target collection. Now all I have to do is select a picture and then press the B key on the keyboard. Boom. You can see it adds it right to the target collection, and there it is. So with a target collection, you can flip through your pictures and just hit the B key over and over again to add things in, and it makes it really quick. Now, as promised, let's talk about collection sets. Collection sets organize your different collections because I have pictures of like 1,000 different species of birds. And if they were all at the same level, that would be a long, long list to scroll through. I certainly want to separate them from my portrait pictures, right? So let's get in there and create our first collection set. I'll click this plus sign and then select Create Collection Set. And I'll call this first one Birds. This will just allow me to separate my birds from everything else. Now, my existing collection, I'll just grab it and drag it up here to birds. And now you can see I have cormorants inside of birds. That's pretty nice. Maybe I want to add another section for just bald eagles. There's a bald eagle. There's a bald eagle, bald eagle. I'll select those pictures, click this plus sign to create a collection, and now I'll specify that I want it inside a collection set. Can't forget to type the name. So now I have a collection set with multiple different types of birds. Now, I could create another collection set inside of that. So I'll click the plus sign here, select Create Collection Set, and this time I'll make a folder for songbirds. And you can see by default it's going to be inside of birds. Jumping back to my catalog, I'm pretty sure I have some songbird pictures in here. Let's search for cardinals. So I'll grab those and drop them right into songbirds. But wait, it's showing me a circle with a line through it. And that's because you can't put pictures inside collection sets. You can put pictures inside collections, and you can put collections inside collection sets. So let's make a new collection for these birds to put them in the songbirds collection set. So I'll click the plus sign there, click Create Collection, call it Cardinals, and I'll put it inside not the birds collection set, but the songbirds collection set. So now I have multiple levels of hierarchy here. Now, these bald eagles and cormorants, they're not really related, but they're both birds of prey. So I think what I'll do is I'll create another collection set for the birds of prey. It's inside of birds. Now I can control click both of these to select them both and drag them right up to birds of prey. And that is how you manually organize your photos using collections. So rather than having to search for keywords or look up metadata, this allows you to quickly jump to a group of photos that might not be otherwise related. Notice I said manually organize your photos with collections. You can also use smart collections to automatically organize your photos into collections based on metadata or text or date the picture was taken or something else. It works a lot like a smart playlist in iTunes if you've ever used that. So let's make a smart collection. I'll select all photographs again, and then I'll click this plus sign and select Create Smart Collection. Now, let's say I want to look at the best photos that I've taken in 2013. How would I do that with filters? Well, I'd probably select a date range of all of 2013, and then I would maybe select photos that are rated 4 or 5 stars. I can make a smart collection that does exactly that. And you might say, earlier we learned how to make preset filters. You could do that too, right? Yeah, they would do exactly the same thing. It's 2 ways to do the same thing. Just depends on how you think. It's nice to have options. So I'll name this smart collection Best of 2013. And you can see here I have the option to match any, all, or none of the rules. Any means I can make 5 rules, and if one of them is true, then it will add the picture to the collection. If I select all, then all of the rules have to be true. I'm going to select all because I need to make 2 different rules here. The rating, of course, I said it needs to be 4 stars or higher. So rating is greater than or equal to 4 stars. Let's make a new one. I can click this list to select one of many different types of criteria. You can select just about any criteria that you can filter on. I'm going to go to date and then select capture date. Now on this list, I choose the operator. If you remember like your middle school math, there's like greater than and less than. Well, I can choose all of those, and I can also choose is in the range. So I'll say is in the range from 2013 January 1st to 2013 December 31st. So now I have 2 criteria. It has to match all of them. I'll click create. Now you can see here there's like a little gear icon. That just means it's a smart collection. The regular collections show up like a bin, like a folder. And when I select this smart collection, you can see it found 158 pictures from 2013 with 4 or 5 stars. So smart collections are a smart way to find the same set of photos over and over again. And when you import new photos, when you rate new photos, change metadata, those pictures can automatically become part of the smart collection, even if they weren't in your library at the time you created the smart collection. Now let's talk about image stacking. Lightroom can stack pictures that are similar. Well, it can stack any two pictures, but the only time you want to stack pictures is if they're very, very similar. In fact, you might have seen it if you've ever worked with virtual copies, because Lightroom automatically stacks virtual copies by default. But you can manually stack any two pictures as well. So let's go into Lightroom and see how that can be done. These 5 pictures of a cedar waxwing are very similar, and maybe as I'm scrolling through my pictures, I'm tired of seeing all 5 of those separately. I can stack them together so they only take up one spot. I'll just select them all. I clicked one and then shift click the last. I'll right click it, and then I will select, see, it got me here. There's no stacking submenu when I right clicked it. You know why? This is something I hate about Lightroom. It's because I have a collection selected. I don't know why you can't stack pictures that are in a collection, but you can't. So just watch out for that if for some reason you don't see the stacking. Instead, what I need to do is I need to keep those pictures selected and go to all photographs. So now you'll see the same pictures are here. This time I right click it and stacking is an option. So I'll select group into stack. So now what we see is these are marked 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 5. I can group all those together by double clicking it. And now they only take up one space. So if you're the type who like rattles off 10 or 20 pictures on continuous shutter, and then the next time you go to browse through your pictures, you're like, oh my God, I took so many pictures that day. Just stack them together and then collapse that stack so they only take up one spot. Anytime you want to uncollapse it, just click it and they all expand. So that's a really quick thing to do. There are a bunch of different ways you can manage stacks. So let's undo that, and let's say we want to actually split this into 2 separate stacks instead of just unstacking 2 of them. I'll select those 2 pictures by control clicking, right click them, select stacking, and then select split stack. Now what we have here is those pictures are in their own little stack. So you can see I can collapse it and we still have those pictures separate from these pictures over here. Again, if you're that guy who shoots on continuous, like me, especially with wildlife, you might not want to go through and manually stack everything. Lightroom has a feature that will check the time that your pictures were captured in and stack pictures that were taken at about the same time. So let's find some wildlife pictures here, something where I took a bunch of pictures in a series. All right, so here are a bunch of flying pictures, and well, some of these are in stacks already. I'll go ahead and select all these different flying pictures, and now I'm gonna have Lightroom automatically stack them. So I'm going to right click this, go down to stacking, and then select auto stack by capture time. Now you can see Lightroom prompts me for the time between the stacks. You can select anything from 1 second up to an hour. Now, my camera takes 5 or 6 pictures per second, so I don't want to group them into all one big stack. So I'll break it down so it just groups pictures taken in the same second as a stack. And then I'll click stack. Now, just so we can see this a little easier, I'll right click these and then collapse all the stacks. There we go. Now remember how many pictures I had before? Now it stacked these into just 1 second increments, but it still greatly reduced the number. So now we can see there are 10 pictures in this one stack, but I can hide them all because they all happen within the same second anyway, right? If I'm browsing the photos and I see a picture from that same second, it's probably gonna look about the same, and then I can just quickly expand it and find the specific picture that I want. So I actually find auto stacking to be terribly useful. Do play with it and see if it helps you organize your pictures. Now let's talk about pics. While rating stars from 1 to 5 is a great way to kind of rank your pictures, pics are much more binary. It's like yes or no. If you select a picture as a pic, it means you like it. You want to keep it, maybe you want to use it. If you select it as a reject, it means you're probably just going to delete it. And in fact, it's really easy to delete all your pictures that are flagged for deletion. So let's go into Lightroom. Pics are something that you generally do when you're first culling your pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and expand these stacks. And I'll double click this so we can see the sequence. Now down here, you'll see the flags. Flag as pic or flag as rejected. And this one's already been flagged as a pic. I can clear that and flag it as a reject if I want. This is also really easy to do with the keyboard. So I like to go right and then that's a good picture. So I'll click P on the keyboard for a pic and I'll go right and I'll be like, that's not as nice. X for a reject. Reject. All right, that's okay. I'll give it a pic. X for reject. Now what I can do is hit the G key to go back into the grid. And on the photo menu here, I can delete rejected photos. I could also do that by just hitting Control Backspace. And now it found all the pictures that I'd marked for deletion by hitting the X key and prompts me to remove them from the library or completely delete them from the disk. So let's just delete them right from the disk. Pics are a great way to filter through your pictures and just find the ones that you want to use and the ones that don't need to be taking up any more space. Now let's talk about labels. If you're a person who thinks in color, as many photographers do, you might want to just organize your pictures by color. Not color in the pictures themselves, but arbitrary colors that you use to organize your pictures. It's easier to demonstrate than explain. So let's go into the library grid. So let's say I want to mark all these baby pictures as red. I'll click that first one, shift click the last one, then right click, set color label, and red. And now you'll see when I move my cursor that Lightroom highlights all these in red. How useful is that? Or maybe I want to do something different. Maybe low-key pictures with a black background, I want to set the color label to green. So these color labels can be anything you can dream up. You can also rename the labels so that they don't show up as red and green, but they show up as personal or business. So let's go in and make our own custom color label set. Under metadata here, we'll go down to color label set and then click edit. Now instead of calling it red, I'll call it high key. And instead of calling it green, I'll call it low key. Maybe this is personal and this is business. Now up here, I'll choose to save the current settings as a new preset and I will call this my colors. Call it whatever you like, then click create. Now I'll click change to save that. So as you can see, this resets some of the colors that I already had, but I can go back and set it again. I'll right click that, go to set color label, and then click low key. These are all kind of high key. So right click that, set color label, and select high key. Now of course you can filter by these. It exists only in Lightroom, so it's an attribute. Let me just reset these filters here. Filters off, okay. There we go. Go back and select attribute. Now I'll just take a look at just my red pictures or just my green pictures. There we go. As you can see, if you select more than one, it'll show you both of them at the same time. Let's turn that off. And if you're constantly adding colors, you can do it with the keyboard. It's a little confusing because you use the keys 6 through 9. So I can press 6 to set it to red. It was already red, so it removed it for me. I can press 7 to set it to yellow, 8 to set it to green, and 9 to set it to blue. The other colors you can't access because you're out of keys on your keyboard. If you go to 0, 0 actually removes your current rating. So they just used all the numbers left to provide keyboard shortcuts for you. So you're gonna find those first 4 are more useful if you're a keyboard kind of guy. Now you don't ever need to use color labels. I don't really use them. But if I was telling you about organizing your pictures by color and that resonated with you, if that sounds like how you think, then go for it. Get the most out of your color labels. But Lightroom provides you like 20 different ways to organize everything. Just pick the ways that really work best for the way that you think. Now let's go into my office real quickly so I can show you my multiple monitor setup, because I think having more than one monitor is just the best way to work in Lightroom. I'd rather have 2 small monitors than one really big monitor, because I like to have one monitor dedicated to a full screen loop view while I keep my grid view on my other monitor. I love using Lightroom with multiple monitors. With a single monitor, you have to kind of multi-purpose this monitor. So you might use the grid view and then double click to zoom in on a picture, and then you'll pull up the film strip if you want to jump between different pictures, and it all works okay. But when you add the second monitor in, you now can dedicate a whole screen to the grid view, and it just allows you to move that much faster. If you had one big monitor, you could kind of manually divide up the windows, but I find it just works better when you add a second monitor, and it's usually cheaper to get 2 small monitors than it is to get one big monitor. There are just a couple of options on the second monitor window that are probably pretty obvious to you. You can switch between using the grid view over here if you wanted to, or doing a compare or a survey or a slideshow. I find I generally just use the loop view to provide myself a close-up. It also has 3 modes over here on the right: normal, live, and locked. Normal is definitely the most useful. They've named it appropriately, and that just changes this as you change the picture over here so that they're always matched up. Live, however, switches the view on this monitor according to whatever you hover your cursor over. So as I hover my cursor over these thumbnails, you can see it changes right away without changing the picture that I've selected. Locked will keep a picture locked in even if I select something different. So I'll select this picture of Chelsea that might be familiar to you, lock it, and now I can go over here to edit a different picture and it doesn't change. This just allows you to change a picture and view another picture for comparison's sake. So let's head back down to the studio and we'll continue the lesson. I hope you found this lesson useful, and more importantly, I hope you get the most out of the Lightroom library module. Once you figure out how to organize your photos like that, it will change your photography, and you'll find your pictures will just be so much more useful because you can easily find your favorite pictures. In fact, it can even make you look like a better photographer, because when somebody asks you if you have a nice picture of your dog, you'll just be pulling up the last picture that you took on your camera phone. You'll be pulling up your very best picture. And that can lead you to enjoy photography more. So if you like this, I hope you'll check out some of my other training materials. Of course, I have a little book called Stunning Digital Photography, which teaches you actual photographic techniques. You can also check out my photography buying guide, which covers all the intricacies of which lenses and cameras and flashes and studio lighting to buy, and that can make a huge difference in your photography too. If you're into video training like this, check out my photography video training series, a set of DVDs, Blu-rays, or online streaming of videos just like this, where I teach you everything about how to take great pictures. You can get all of that at Amazon or at sdpcommunity.com. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. You can contact me at tony@northrup.org. Thanks, and I can't wait to see your pictures.